Call the meeting to order, please. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Ann Pierce,
Eliza Drolet.
Kara Curry-Tono.
Lila Atkins,
Heidi Duper.
Carol Locke.
Jay Fitzpatrick.
Ruby.
Matt Jazokis. Jason Henry.
Brandy Pelletier.
And Tim Brother.
All right, we're going to go right into non-public session tonight. So,
Two, aye.
Second.
all those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have to do a roll call? Sorry. We haven't done non-public in a long time.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Who's up?
Yeah, I
Who's
got
up this spring?
elected.
Anybody? Lila.
I think I am.
Who else is up?
Karen's up in the spring. Right?
You're up in the
Are
spring?
you up?
Yeah.
Are you running again?
Well, I'm not alone. Who's with me?
We want her to.
Are we ready?
Randy?
I'm ready.
I think I
We
am.
came out of non-public. All right, we're out of non-public now, so we'll have public input. We have one person sitting there. Did you have any input for us tonight?
Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great year.
Oh, well, we hope you have a great year, too. All right, I'm going to close public input, and we'll do an agenda review.
Make a motion at the agenda along with the other attachments that were given out to us.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any discussion? Sorry, I didn't ask. Any discussion?
I'll just note that we are going to have a second non-public session.
Do we need a second non-public?
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to reaffirm a phone poll, an email poll that we conducted at the end of last week regarding admitting an exchange student. That needs to be done in open meeting.
All right,
It's
so
the
we'll
only
put
addition
it
that I
under
have for you.
action items.
Well, you're putting it under number
And we're having
7.
another, let's see, it's on here if necessary, so that's where we'll put it. That's already on the agenda. All right, so we have an agenda that's been amended to add the exchange student. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of August 2nd, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, can I make a note of that? So the non-public, item 11, I was not present last month, but it has me making motions and various other things.
Really?
That's an error.
So I just wanted to point that out. I
Well,
did
yeah,
not do
we
it.
definitely did. So we'll amend the minutes to reflect that Liza wasn't here.
We'll check the notes, sorry.
Any other changes to the notes?
Wonder who made those motions?
All right, all those in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. All right, we're on to finance. You're up, Heidi.
I think it's Karen.
Oh, okay. Catching up with the other stuff here. So the finance committee met tonight. There were only 2 of us, so it was pretty quick. We did our usual of reviewing the expenditures and revenue. We worked on our budget schedule for the upcoming months. And we do have an action to bring to the board, which I didn't get a chance to see if that was on there when we were talking about the agenda.
Is that the
review.
budget transfer? It is on there, the budget
Okay.
transfer?
Yep, so I'll bring that up during the action items.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, the audit update. Should we tell them?
You ready to talk about
Well, just that they're done. They're done, they're on site for Prospect Mountain, and the estimated, and it's still estimated because it's not finalized, but it's about 180,000 that'll be returned to the districts.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay. Building and grounds?
I have a written report from Andy Callahan. I took the liberty of telling him he didn't have to come present to you tonight, but it's in your packet. And I think it did make the email packet.
I saw it,
Who made the email?
That
the
one.
summer projects.
The only thing I note is that the sidewalk repairs aren't done yet, and he's waiting for weather or some other. But he has the supplies. We purchased everything prior to June 30th that he needed for that. I had a chance to look at the auditorium carpet and the chorus room tile last week. They look fantastic. So that's nice. The auditorium carpet was replaced with carpet tiles. So they're being really tough about taking anything in there that's not water. They got me the other day, and I had to leave my coffee outside. But in the event there is, yeah, I'm sure Jay enjoyed that. In the event something happens, it's pretty simple to replace a square in that kind of carpeting. So I think that's good. for the future. We've got a supply chain problem with the gymnasium sound system, but again, it's been encumbered, it's been ordered, and we're just waiting for that. The sign on the sign out at the end of the driveway, I hope you can tell that it's been cleaned and repainted, because if you ever looked at it up close
I didn't.
before,
I didn't
it's a lot better. I don't know what the bill's gonna look like, because that guy was out there, it seemed like for 9 days, but he did a great job.
Wow, I never even noticed, sorry.
It was pretty bad,
It was
actually.
bad?
It was covered with lichen and faded, and yeah,
I guess I
was
just
pretty
looked
beat
at
up.
it from afar.
Are we typically trying to put school board meetings on the board, just so people know?
Oh, we have not in the past. So it's
We
just
do it
been
at ACS, I guess. is
Yeah, we do,
Yes.
yeah.
We do it
Yeah,
at both
Barnes
elementary
did.
schools, actually, yes.
Yeah,
Both
that'd be
elementary
nice.
schools do that.
I mean, if it's something that you want done, then it'll get done, but it's never been.
I didn't see it on the school calendar either, so I don't know that we.
We
are-
probably
It was
should put
posted.
it out there,
Okay.
Yeah.
just to make sure
I
people
mean, I know
know.
it's legally posted, but as far as like informing the ways people actually pay attention, I'm not sure that we're getting the word out.
Got it.
All right, ESSER-funded construction update?
You've actually already heard the same update in the 2 town school board meetings. H.L. Turner is designing all 3 of these projects for us, and we anticipate their first drawings by the end of September this month. We already had the activities to fund the design approved by DOE, so we're just in process now. So we should have designs. We'll probably want to have a building and grounds committee meeting to talk about the scope of that project once we have it, because we have a funding limitation, and that's a decision that you might want to make as a board about, do you want to add other funds to the available grant funds in order to get more work done, as opposed to kind of accepting that limit. So when we have those drawings in, we'll schedule a building and grounds meeting. Yeah,
Looking at
looking at
JMA
you.
there, guy. Yeah, I'm the perfect person for that one.
Looking at the chair of the building and grounds committee. as
Exactly,
say
I
that.
was looking at him also. You're the chair. Capital plan, we had that lovely meeting. You brought
You want to talk about
the
that?
spreadsheet? I think we could talk about it.
I talk a lot at these things. You had your chance. Here's the latest revision to the high school's capital plan. It's in your packets. But when we met with the Alton CIP committee last week, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I took the liberty of telling them not to expect a capital warrant article from the high school until the joint board is able to address the enrollment situation here. And I think that's consistent with what you've been doing for the last few years, and that's where we are. So if we move into a world of open enrollment and potential revenue streams, then maybe it would make sense to approach the capital plan again. In the meantime, we have the luxury of a building that's just not quite 20 years old yet, so most of the original parts are still good. You've been able to do things like carpet and some floors where you need to. So the capital plan is here. We can pull it out and ask staff to jump in again and help revise it when we're ready to do something with it, but in the meantime, there it is.
I just want to say Tim did a great job presenting to the towns committee. He really gave them detailed assessment of ACS as well as Prospect. He did a great job. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Carol.
I didn't have to say much.
Now present it to Barnstead.
You don't have a CIP committee, or I would be there.
And he's been in touch by email, so she's going to go to the SAU, the town planner, and meet with Tim.
And Heidi.
And we're all happy. Everyone's happy now. I tell you, he cracked a few smiles even. I was pretty impressed.
They give you kind of more of a definition of what their role is, because I know we talked a little bit about,
Yeah.
we're not really sure how all these pieces fit together.
It turns out, what I got from our meeting with them was, it turns out they've been working with the town department heads for a couple of years to create a format and a structure and forms for everyone to use for capital planning. And after we presented ours, one of them actually said, I suggest we just have them keep doing what they're doing and not ask them to do what we do. And that's sort of how we left it, is that we'll go back once a year and remind them, sort of update our documents and tell them where we are, and they seem pretty happy.
They were happy, and their role really is to make sure the town isn't being overburdened by too many capital improvements in one year. So we'll talk about it next week at ACS meeting, but there was kind of a cluster of money that they thought maybe we could wait until the following year to use, because there was another capital improvement happening in the town. So that's kind of their role. They want to see if we can kind of help them out to spread out the warrants so that we're not overburdening the taxpayer, which is very legitimate.
And we'll continue to meet with them in August, like we did this year, which means before we start any of our budget processes, we'll have heard whatever opinions they want to express. And in this case, they expressed an opinion, and we said, yeah, we can probably accommodate that. So when we come to, in that case, it'll be the Alton Board to talk about budget development, we'll talk about that, and I have a feeling it'll be no problem.
Okay. It was a good meeting.
Yeah.
Very productive, and Sean did a great job.
Sean was
too.
great.
But again, we'll address that Monday night, sorry. All right, so now we're on to you, Jay.
Good evening.
Let's report.
Teacher workshop day back on the 30th and 31st went well. Faculty and staff appeared to be excited about being back. We accomplished everything that we needed to. We gave teachers ample time to prepare and meet with each other. Showed them a couple of new things that we have going on, discipline dashboard as well as cause, which we'll present in just a moment. We simplified the annual trainings this year for faculty and staff as well. Freshman orientation last Thursday, it went well. There were a few hiccups, but nothing too major. I did make a couple of errors that I had to correct. I had misinformed parents about the Federal Food Assistance Program. And so I had sent a correspondence home last week letting parents know about that, and it was pointed out to me of the mistake, and so I actually called parents last night and informed them of the mistake, as well as it being the first day of school today. Fortunately, Infinite Campus isn't necessarily up and running to its full capacity, so not everybody got the original memo, which was a win for me. But at this point, it should be okay. I stood in the cafeteria line today. Any student who came through that was under the impression they were still getting free or reduced lunch, we made sure they got fed today, and I'll have Tim pay for that down the road. But we also made it very clear that we explained to them what that process looks like. And we've distributed free and reduced lunch forms, applications to all the students at this point. At the end of this week, I'll put another memo out to parents saying, get those forms back to us sooner than later.
So that letter was posted online, so
Yeah.
it may be beneficial for Barnstead and ACS to get some sort of communication, because I don't have any kids here, but I read that and was like, oh, it must be the same at the elementary school, and my kids were like, no, not so much. But I don't know if there's other people that saw it too.
I'm sure there's confusion going on in all directions, so yeah, I'll work to try to
And
fix
somebody
it.
had trouble adding funds to my school.
There were always
My school
glitches,
bus.
yeah.
We had trouble getting all of the freshmen and new students into the system, and so on freshman orientation day, kids weren't able to access their accounts like normal. So
It's
we
fixed.
just haven't been able to.
It is.
It is fixed at this point, yeah. So
And in Alton, there's an Alton Parent Facebook page, and that's where they posted the price of lunches. So the confusion happened when you had a high school student who was saying they had free lunch, and then the ACS was saying this is what you'd owe if you came in and got lunch. So that's how we clarified.
Right.
So Alton parents know that they have to pay for lunch, I believe.
Yeah, the communication that went out from the elementary schools directly did correctly state that universal free lunch is over, and we're going back to charging for lunches for those students who don't qualify for free or reduced. There will be another way that families with students in the elementary schools receive the free and reduced lunch application form again, and that'll be in hard copy in the mail from me going out by Friday with a letter explaining why we're being like this, about trying to get everybody to fill out that application, and explaining how it relates to adequacy aid and federal grants, and actually reduces tax burden if we just have everybody fill out that free and reduced lunch application, whether they're interested in assistance or think they may not qualify. The more, if we could get everybody just to fill that out, that would be ideal. So they'll hear it again, and my letter starts with, this universal free lunch thing is over, and restates that.
So, and if I can get a copy of that, I'll share it out with you.
Good, and I think to add to the pile of confusion of what I heard from people is that the original notice about free lunch being continued, which was incorrect, went out by letter and, you know, by text and by email, but then the correction only went out on a phone message. So yeah, if not everybody was on the same page, I think.
I would just like to say, I am so sorry, that must have been such a pain. That's all I can think about with all of that. So, good job, and it is unfortunate that lunch is just not free. That's just free. Just
unfortunate.
Just have it be free. That's what I would like.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our taxpayers don't want to.
I know, but that's
good
my own
customer
opinion, but
service.
yeah, so good job. That sounds like quite a
was
little
quite the-
task for
yeah.
the beginning of school. I love that.
Yeah, well, during the freshman orientation night, I apologized to parents because I had sent out letters to all the freshman parents saying, hey, these things are going to happen on these dates, and those things didn't happen either, so I'm batting 1,000 this year, at the start of the year, so.
There was a lot of apologies that night, because I was at it too, so.
Yep.
You apologized a lot?
I did, yep, I do apologize
Nice.
a number of times.
Nice.
And talked about your hair a lot.
Thank you for bringing that
You're
up.
welcome.
That was another apology that I made for my hair.
Hair. Okay.
Moving on to
Wait, there's
today.
more?
Moving on.
Moving on to today, first day of school for everybody. We started the day with an assembly, all school assembly. It was great to have everybody here. It was such a positive energy. It was, I think I've shared with you in the past, over the past couple of years when kids are coming into the building, so many hoods up, so many ear pods in, going out of their way not to make eye contact and say hello. And I was blown away by how many kids this morning made eye contact, were responsive to my good morning, how's it going, welcome back. So many kids who initiated the greeting. It was great. It hasn't been like that in 3 years, so it was great to get back to that. Yeah. And then the vibe throughout the school today, it seemed positive. Kids seemed excited about being here, which was great. I met with each grade level, grades 10 through 12, separately throughout the morning and went over relevant and information for them. And everybody did great. It was a very positive feeling throughout the building tonight. We're running a traditional 7-period bell schedule all week. Next week we'll start in on the schedule where the Tuesdays and Thursdays are blocked. PAC activities will actually start next Thursday. I distributed paper to you. These are the PAC sessions that are running for session 1, first 4 weeks of school. At this point, we've done most of our purchasing. I have about 25 to 30 students who still need to sign up for a PAC activity. So we'll get those in place and ready to go by the end of this week so that all of the kids know where they're going to be starting next week for PAC.
What the heck is created? Love that.
Which one?
What is created?
By PMHS staff member.
Created by PMHS staff member. I think that's a typo. I don't think it's anything. I think she had cut and pasted the
Gotcha.
columns. So
It was put in the free lunch.
yeah, thank you for
Like,
pointing
is
that
that a
out.
thing?
I apologize for that.
I would hope so, Jay. Gosh.
Still in 1,000.
That's hysterical.
Yeah. No, I'm like, is that a thing or is it a typo or?
Kind of funny. That would have been an interesting little workshop. Why not?
It's just an umbrella for anything.
Yeah, right. Could be
Go
anything.
there and be creative.
It's improv.
This Friday we have a guest speaker. We're going to open up the year with a guest speaker. He's been here several times in the past. I have him come in every 3 or 4 years. His name's Ed Garrity. He comes in and does a great assembly for motivation and leadership. He'll do an all-school presentation for about 50 minutes, and then he'll work with about 50 to 100 kids afterwards for an additional 50 minutes, just talking about ways to empower their inner leader. So that's my report, unless anyone has any particular questions.
So how do you choose the 50 to 100 that meet with them?
What I've asked is for teachers to make recommendations as to who they would like, who they're
Just
nominating.
curious.
Does that include the new freshman kiddos?
It includes anyone.
Yeah.
The only difficulty at this point is that we don't know
Right.
the freshmen very well. But I've put it out to teachers, and I will send out another reminder either tomorrow or Thursday asking for anybody one more sweep. So,
Great.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Special education report.
Hi, everyone. It won't be long. It might be long. I'm Ruth Gruby, and I've met all of you in the past. What I wanted to talk about today, in Massachusetts, in my previous life, we used to have this thing called a DCAP. It was a district curriculum accommodation plan. And in that plan, there were universal accommodations that were given K through 12 or PK through 12. So when I first started working with Jay last year, we noticed that the 504s, there were a lot of 504s with some similar accommodations in them. And we talked about taking those similar accommodations and almost making a DCAP for the 504s. So 504s are different than IEPs. A lot of people confuse them. They are with IDEA, but the difference is for IEPs, it's a student individualized who needs specially designed instruction. For a 504, it's a life-altering disability or something happens and they can't access the curriculum. They can access the curriculum, but their setting might have to be changed. They might need a related services provider if they broke their leg. They might need to take the elevator. They have some anxiety, things along those lines. And so we looked at both the IEPs, Jay and I did. We don't talk often, as you can tell, our personalities don't match well. And but we really sat down and talked about, we really looked at the common accommodations. And Jay, of course, didn't like the name DCAP, so we had to change it. And it doesn't matter, the purpose is the same. So what we wanted to do is just talk about what were the frequent accommodations, which a lot of times are executive functioning, the organization piece, working with kids with the organization piece. It's extended times on test, preferential seating, frequent breaks. By frequent, I don't mean like the full hour, 5-minute break on a 90-minute class or 2 5 minutes on a 90-minute, depending what your ADHD kids would really benefit them. So we brainstormed, we talked about it, and so we named our, what is it called? We named our DCAP Curriculum Accommodation Universal for Student Equity. We're calling it CAUSE, not to be confused with CRAZE, yes. And really what we looked at were the common accommodations. The total credit in this is, at one point, I was the 504 coordinator, and we passed the baton to general ed, to the assistant principal, and she now is the coordinator because it is a general ed initiative. It's not necessarily a special ed initiative. These are accommodations in the general ed classroom that are made, and it's not to differentiate instruction for kids. So that's the crux of that. So Amanda Russell, who is Jay's AP, did a great job kind of synthesizing all of the documents that we had, all of the research that was studied, and kind of broke it down into several different categories. And we can pass out, if you want to pass out the presentation that Amanda did. We just brought it, the slide. I know it's not in the agenda, should we not do that? Okay, just so everyone can follow along. So it's really in 3 parts, because when you look at a 504, there is the student will do this, the teachers will do this, the families will do this at the end of it. So if I have attention deficit disorder, then I'm going to be responsible for XYZ that we all talk about in the meeting. And then the parents will say, yep, I'm going to check the agenda book and do this. And then the teachers also are going to look at, if it's an organization piece, they're going to look at that as well. So what Amanda did, when she presented to the school, taking all of this data that we had, was looking at the students' expectations. So when we talk to students, and we really want them to start to advocate for their educational needs, right? They're at an age where sometimes, they're not advocating, and we really want them to be confident and competent in being able to do that. So for example, if you look at the student's expectation, it's a lighter gray here in the second row on the right. They may request a break from a class. Sometimes kids don't think they can get up out of the seat. Some children are internally anxious, some are externally anxious by doing other things. So these pretty much are universal, that, yeah, as a teacher, if somebody comes up to you and says, I need a break, they can be given it. And they don't need a 504 for that. And it really does move general ed forward as well as special ed. Because though the general education kids who may not be identified as special ed, who may have similar anxiety but have different strategies, they're able to access the same accommodations that somebody else would be able to, for these general accommodations, not necessarily, like I said, the specialized instruction. When you look at the extended time on tests, we're not talking like 18 hours. If a student is not making an attempt or not making an effort, working with the teachers, and they're just, oh, I can't do this or whatever, that's going to be a different conversation, right, to have with the student. But if you have a student, a general educator, or who is like in a play one night and drama one night, comes to class every day, and just didn't get to their homework, or just didn't get to something that was due, that's a conversation they can now have with the staff and be given that accommodation. So that's on the student's expectation page. A couple more in the upper. A lot of the executive functioning piece, it's that organization in your brain. It's understanding what's coming up next, or what passed, and how long the meeting is, and what you need to do as far as homework. And with the pandemic, we've seen an uptick in that organization piece. Is just, they're struggling. Our kids are struggling a little bit. And so what we did in the student expectations is really talk about that organization piece. And then we did it again in the family expectations, and the next page in the teacher's expectations. So really looking at that, you got to put your backpack in this area every night and make sure you check it. I mean, I had 3 children that emptied up their thing, and it was just this cacophony of either nothing with one of my kids, or a lot of things with my other 2. So it's that, and it's just giving parents permission to know what the executive functioning piece, because a lot of us that aren't in this field don't really know what that means when we're talking in a meeting about it, or when somebody else is talking about it. So then the teacher expectations, and really these teachers are doing it every single day. And Amanda really stressed that in the teacher presentation. And it's good teaching. It's chunking out things. It's looking, taking students for where they're at. It's student doesn't want to sit in the middle of the room with all that noise. It's allowing them to move their seat to an area that is a little more quiet for them, or allows them to have maximum feasibility, if you will. And then outlines of notes that are open book tests, and it's not taking the curriculum and making it easier. It's just giving our kids a chance to access it from where they're at. So, and that's, I think, really what we wanted to stress on that piece. Behavior piece, we have like a second little cheat sheet that we've given the kids, which really, this is the high level, which really gets into like what executive functioning looks like for kids, how they can manage their behavior, because some kids just can't, and how they can do it, and helps parents with strategies and helping them do that. What did we miss?
You covered everything. Really what Amanda did,
Yep.
the task at hand was to simplify things and kind of point out the things that are already done, and then the things that are supposed to be done regardless if it's 504, it's just good practice in education. So on page 2, bottom right-hand corner, there's a box there that says cause teacher expectations,
Yeah.
and you see that opening bold-faced exclamation point, don't worry, you're already doing these things.
Yes.
And so we've broken down those accommodations into those 6 categories. So Amanda, Mrs. Russell rather, over
Yes.
the next 2 days, will be meeting with every kid in the building, going into all English classes and explaining to them their role and their ownership in cause.
Yep.
We've already done that with all of the faculty and the staff on day 1. And so over the course of this year, as Amanda then begins to have review meetings, we can start adjusting 504 plans to have common language. And our goal over the next several years is to eliminate some of these 504s that contain things that really should not be accommodations. Student, Jason allowed to have his left earbud in because it makes him feel better, isn't an accommodation that helps him access
Curriculum.
learning. So for us, we will now use this template and all of the things that have been listed here for students, teachers, and families
Right.
to start building 504s that go across the board.
Right.
You're seeing 2 things here. First, there's a passing of a torch at Prospect Mountain High School. Historically, 504 processes have been considered special education processes. They are not. So you are hearing both the voice of the director of special education, but then the principal with a lot of work that has been done by the assistant principal, because the assistant principal is now, as of this year, serving as the 504 coordinator
Right.
for the high school. The other thing that's happening is you've heard about these most common accommodations that are really just best practices for educators being made available to all students in the school, and one of them just alluded to this, one of the effects of that is likely to be that when some students and parents come asking about 504 plans, and the assistant principal or that team ask, well, what do you have in mind? There's a real possibility that they're going to hear, well, my child might need frequent breaks and extended time on tests and the ability to make up and revise assignments if he doesn't do great the first, and we'll say all of those things are available to every student in this school. And that might mean that it's not necessary to write as many 504 plans for these things that, once again, are these days generally just considered best practices.
Yeah.
And we've, Amanda, or Mrs. Russell, has begun working with the assistant principal from at least Barnstead Elementary. I don't know if she's reached out to Alton Central yet to share this information. And our hope is that over the next several years that we see a transition, that this is happening, K through 12, all using the same language.
No, we were looking at accommodations and we were looking at IEPs and 504s last year, and 1 in 3 kids in the high school requires accommodations. And that's alarming, right? 33% of the kids, when you add the numbers up, were receiving accommodations in classrooms. So we knew, when we looked at it, we knew that we needed something universal. And we knew that teachers are reading through all of the 504s, they're reading through, and they're general educators. And we have special educators working on the specialized instruction for the IEP students, the kids who have some disabilities, but then we have this 504 group that, by law, if we're not following the 504, then the teacher is liable. And that's scary, right? So we want to give the teachers all the tools that they need in order to know, what is executive functioning? General ed teachers weren't trained on executive functioning. Special educators are, but so how can we help them? How can we just remind them that they already know what it is, but it's just called something, right? But that's where we're at. Any questions or comments? Yes.
So yeah, I applaud the effort, because these are all things that help kids learn
Yes.
better in the end. I guess my concern is, you said you're starting some teacher training, but it seems to me part of this is teacher training so that students and parents don't feel like they need a specific accommodation to give their student a better learning environment. So I just wanted to understand more about you said a few times, the teachers already know this, the teachers already
Yep.
do this. but that seems to be in contrast to maybe what the students and parents are experiencing if they feel that they need a 504 plan in order to receive what we're considering universal accommodations. So there seems to be a disconnect there a
Yeah.
little bit that I'm trying to understand.
Maybe I didn't,
So, I don't know if I'm understanding the question that you're asking.
So my question, this is moving forward as a plan to give teachers a template of universal accommodations that they can provide. But it sounds like this is something different than what we're doing now.
I don't know if
So,
it's.
I'm sorry.
No.
So what exists now with 504s is that a student, Ruthie may have a 504, and in that 504 it has a list of things that teachers have to do in order to accommodate. So what this is the beginning of a transition to eventually eliminate some of that verbiage that is very specific to that one student and make it something that's applicable to every student. So I'll use extended time, for example. On some 504 plans, it will say Ruthie gets extended time, Jay gets extended time. Tim doesn't have that. He doesn't have a 504 plan. And so what we want to, the culture that we want to build is that everyone, if they need extended time, has access to standard time. And so the need to have a 504 that specifically says Jay and Ruthie will have extended time becomes less necessary. Every teacher will offer extended time as long as it's based on something that is reasonable, something that is communicated by the student, and it's just not oh, I didn't do anything for the last week, I want extra time. No, we've noticed that you have been doing it. With today's technology, we can document everything that you've done and when you've done it. And so if you can prove that you have been doing everything in a timely fashion, but need extra time, anybody can get extra time. That's what we're going after.
Right, so what I'm asking about, that's different than what happens now.
Yes.
So what's the training piece for teachers? Are we doing that in professional development?
So that's what we went
How are we rolling
over.
this out as an universal process?
So we went over that with teachers on day one. And to be honest with you, many of the things that exist within this document, most teachers already do. There's a handful that don't. But our job over the next year will be to give constant reminders, offer constant assistance when it's needed. If it's brought to our attention that someone is not doing these things, then we provide a positive intervention to say, why not, and what can we do to assist so that it makes sense to you?
No, that makes sense. And I think, having this as a basis of consistency across teachers is important, because I think there is a wide range of how teachers handle a lot of issues as far as grading and missing assignments, and if this can provide consistency, that's great. And then my other concern is, there are a lot of, I don't know a lot, but there are students who have 504 plans because they have specific medical needs.
Correct.
And medical
Oh, yeah.
504. And I just want to make sure that we're not somehow diluting that with this process.
No. If you break your ankle and you need to use the elevator and you have a 504 for the purpose of using the elevator, then that's a reasonable 504 accommodation that is specific to you.
Right,
not
and there
universal.
are kids with chronic conditions who
Yep.
also
Yes.
need
Yep.
specific
Absolutely.
504.
Diabetic,
Yeah.
asthma, whatever it might be.
And again, as part of that, I think consistency is important, because I can pick out some experience in the past where 504 plans were not communicated across the board to teachers. And when you speak of, it's going to be the student bringing it up and the student advocating, that's not something that's always available to certain students,
Correct.
especially with chronic conditions. So there needs to be a process for making sure
Yes. If
teachers
it's-
are aware of specific 504 needs, and that it doesn't turn into getting diluted in the universal. I guess
Correct.
is
No,
my concern.
our specific chronic 504s, our medical 504s, our nurse is the case manager. And we learn from the 8th grade guidance counselors, if you will, and those meetings are set up prior to school starting. What we're talking about is a student that may have 18 accommodations and whatever the letter of the alphabet is, those are the accommodations, and the accommodations are very benign right now. They're not focused on, it's the left earbud that they need to have in the classroom, even while the teacher's directly giving, directions to
Yeah, well, that's not a reasonable accommodation.
It's not, but it's there, right? And so those are the discussions that we're having with parents, and we're having, what we need to, the teachers get every 504 and that's on their team, and every IEP that's on their team. Those are given first day of school or even before, and they open up their email and it's there. The accommodations are there, the case managers work with the general ed teachers. That's a process that we put into place last year. I've had multiple gen ed teachers ask, how would you do this in this situation? Or that's what we want, right? We want to be able to accommodate all kids. And even though I wear that, special ed director hat, it's all kids that need it, because we don't know the undiagnosed student. We don't know the student who isn't gonna advocate. This child is not gonna advocate today. They're gonna hopefully know that this is a place they can do with this common language, that they can advocate hopefully successfully by mid next year, or even by the end of this year.
I had a question about parent training.
Yeah.
So, for example, if my child is really anxious about an assignment, do I know that they can get an extension? In other words, how are we informing parents of
Yes.
this?
Very good question.
So one of the ways that we're going to inform parents is putting out literature to them. We haven't hit that point yet. We haven't sent anything out to parents. We started with teachers. We're hitting students this week. Our next phase will be to share whatever information is relevant, simplify it so that parents can understand it. And so, as parents request a 504 meeting, or if it's time for an annual review, then we'll have parents in and be able to have more specific conversation with them. But at this phase, it's going to be here's what we're doing.
Sure.
If you have questions, please ask.
And most parents who have children who are in those positions readily contact us. I mean, they're very good advocates for their children. That's what you want.
Not always.
So,
So,
What I've experienced
I love
is-
your optimism. But I just would worry that a parent would have a child at home and not know that child could ask for an extension. That's all. That's the type of thing that a parent needs to know, so
Yep.
that when they're sitting with that child at night,
On the
trying with the
website too,
homework.
right?
I mean, that's just a small example of the extension.
Yep.
But hopefully, parents advocate for their kids.
In my experience, they have.
I'm glad.
it's just a funny juxtaposition that we're talking about giving accommodations for everybody in extended time, and then we're gonna talk about the SAT report. So I guess my question too is, I have a little issue with universal accommodations,
Okay.
because I don't know as though it really is a best practice for all students.
JMA students? What do you mean? What students?
I think that some students need to experience taking a test in a certain time, and
That's
having
the pressure.
the pressure. We've done away with AP courses. Now we're talking about going to universal accommodations. So we're certainly going in a different direction. And while I think that this is a great initiative, I also just want to be really cautious that we are still preparing other kids for that college setting and that higher stakes, and not just having universal accommodations. And I really like that you've been cognizant of the fact that you're not talking about just extended time when a student has not prepared.
Correct.
And I think that's great. So clearly you know what you're talking about, and you've done your homework and you're prepared. But so that's just my concern, is that other group of kids. And I'm sure you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. So just to give you some insight, we have, for a long time, there are certain departments and certain teachers that have been doing this without the title. And I'm going to use the math department. So the math department collectively have decided, they'll offer retakes to anybody who wants it. And what they found were that the kids who were most often to take a retake were the kids who were trying to get a 98 instead of a 95. So they, you know, they had to switch things around and say, all right, you know what, 90. If you got a 90 or less, or I'm sorry, if you get a 90 or more, you're ineligible to take a retake on this one. You're playing that game. So the math department has been allowing redos. They've been allowing retakes. They allow you to pass in work beyond the deadline, whether it's, and in order to do the summative assessment, in order to do the retake, you have to prove that you're serious,
You've done the
because
work, right.
you need to have done all of your formatives, right? You have to make a special request. So they have a process for kids to follow that. And I don't think it has come as a detriment to any of the higher functioning kids. And I think that was a concern that
Right.
we heard from staff, like, is this just gonna give everybody the excuse to turn in something late? We haven't seen that, and I think for some, it's a fair statement to make, but we as a school haven't seen that. We haven't
Yeah.
seen kids abuse the opportunity to redo something. Or
Jay, let me
retake
be
something.
honest. I have a daughter who, and I would classify as a pretty good student.
Yep.
And she takes advantage of, not in a bad way, in a good way, of these things. But as a parent and as a community member, I also would not want to, not bring it up.
No, it's
Because, like I said, we also still have this as a
Right.
factor, and I also think that this is ridiculous, because I don't truly believe in the SAT, and
Not there yet.
yeah, so, I
Yeah.
mean, that's just,
I
it's,
have to give my report tonight. You guys are all here for it.
That's
it's just a point of discussion, that's all.
No, I think it's excellent, and the one thing too, as you know about the SATs, accommodations are generally for just students on IEPs. There's no extended time for a gen ed student.
No, absolutely not.
Or even a
And to
504
give them
student
that
to get
task
extended time in College Board.
is-
It's a whole different process.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that, this is our first at-bat
Yep.
of giving this
Yep.
a shot. And if we, over the course of this year, are getting feedback and collecting data that it's being abused or something's not working, it's a living document. We're
Yep.
going to tweak it
Yep.
as we go. So those things are not lost. We're not turning blind eye to that. There aren't going to be problems, or certain things will
Right,
not
you're
happen.
building the plane
Yep.
as you're flying,
We
I
are.
get it, yeah.
but we're
That's-
also collecting data.
Yeah.
From the teachers, from the department heads, from the different groups, to see who are taking the extra time or
Yeah.
taking the breaks, or, because
Well,
we may see that some people require something more in-depth.
And I think cleaning up the accommodations is so admirable. I mean, that's.
I think the whole document's great. I wasn't trying to be negative
No,
about it.
Oh, God,
Yeah,
no,
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 I'm
no.
not-
We're not taking it as negative.
No, not
This-
at
This
all.
is part
Not
of
at
that
all.
I just
process
wanted
of
to
trying
make
to
sure that everyone's
implement something.
educated about
Yep.
it.
No, absolutely.
You know,
No, and that's just it.
Yeah,
is
it's
that
not- I'm not
we're
trying to be
seeing every
negative
angle.
either.
That's okay,
Yep.
that's no problem.
Nope, not taking it as that.
No.
We get it that it's a
It's
process.
discussion.
Yeah.
But on
It's
the
a
flip
good one.
side, though, I think it will be interesting for you guys to watch these freshmen, because
Yes.
Yeah.
mine
Right.
specifically has no executive functioning skills, because the balance of her middle school years were COVID, and it was a cake.
We're seeing that, and yes,
She's
and-
slammed,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
and it's gonna be, so I'm glad to hear that someone is gonna be talking to all the students about executive functioning. 'cause
Yes, and a
not
lot-
every parent has the ability to impart that
Well, they're not
knowledge.
educators, they're just like, get it done, and my daughter
Well,
back in the
kids
day.
don't
listen to parents either.
No, they
That
don't,
too, yeah.
they don't.
Teenagers are teenagers.
Yeah, and it is interesting to that point, because we have a group of students who know no different, right?
Right.
To them, this is gonna be what we do, and we'll be able to look at some of the upperclassmen and say, how many of them took advantage of this? And so I track everything, all of the kids that come through the ESC, all of the kids who go through the intervention room, I track all of that as to why they're there, what they did when they were there. We instituted something else this year, to closely watch what's happening within the classroom in terms of discipline and academic intervention. So we're just taking a little bit of a different approach than we ever have before to try to get our finger on this pulse, because like she said, 33% of our student population is a large population, and that's the identified ones. That's not even the ones who are at this point.
COVID, post-COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're talking about this bucket, that we really have to reach.
Yeah. Good work.
Thank you.
Okay. Nice chatting.
I'm just gonna say ditto.
on to curriculum and assessment.
Tim, can I? Thank you. Bye, guys.
Well, good evening, everyone. For those of you that I haven't met, it's nice to meet you. And, I look forward to working with you guys. It's been a whirlwind of a month since I've been here. Just to go over a few things that tie nicely into what Jay was just talking about and Ruth. One of the things that I've spoken to the admin team, but also faculty and staff, is taking a look at our school purpose and really kind of taking a look at three solid questions. You know, what have we built and what are we building? And that's our vision. And making sure that our vision is clear, not just a piece of paper that's on a wall that people take a look at periodically or during an AS&C accreditation process. And so Prospect Mountain has, you know, a great vision. It's well defined and it's clearly articulated as to what we're looking for when our students graduate. And then the next part of that is, why is it important? And that's our mission. And right now, our mission here at Prospect Mountain High School is personalization. And so tying into that cause, tying into that idea that you know, kids are coming in with all these different types of pathways or things that they want to set forth for themselves, whether it be college, whether it be career oriented, whether it be the armed forces, and really designing those types of courses for them in terms of the way we develop our curriculum, are implementing our instruction and our assessment practices. You know, sometimes it is a paper pencil test like the SAT, but other times it might be a presentation, or it might be a group presentation or something of that magnitude. You might have an artist who decides that this is the way they're going to show you that they have that knowledge. Or it could even be a conversation in some cases where a kid struggles with that piece of it. So really kind of taking a look at different personalization for them. And then lastly, you know, what is the role of everybody in the building, you know, because it's important to them as well. And those are our core values. And, you know, making sure that those are those non-negotiables, not meaning that, you know, Jay says these are the core values. But when we have those core values, which we do here, we're following through with those and we're understanding them. And so this all kind of ties in cause and some of the things that are going on here. So you'll hear me talk about that more and more. So as we talk about that, you know, we have a mentoring program that we just kicked off. We had a training with our school coordinators as well as our mentors. That took place last week. We had a couple-hour conversation. It's a more formalized process. There's a whole book, about 55 pages worth of stuff in there to support the mentors and the coordinators in that piece of it. The other part of this is that we'll have an outside trainer coming in to do some facilitation for our mentors in our coaches, and it's a coaching model. And the idea is that we build capacity internally so that we don't have to worry or you know, look to outside people coming in. We have a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge around mentoring. There's some expertise there, and so we really want to take their expertise and grow them personally so that they can then continue to maintain that program beyond that. And again, it's a formalized process. That includes you know, weekly check-ins with their mentors and mentees. There's monthly meetings. The monthly meetings might be with the site coordinators, it may be with the administration, it might be with myself, and have a variety of different topics. There's a month-to-month list of topics. And again, it's differentiated in the sense that if you have somebody that's new to teaching versus somebody that's new to education, there's two different ways you can go about that. You don't have to get into the weeds with some of them. They know what an open house is, right? They might know how does it work here versus what I'm used to. But so those are some of the things there. Obviously for us, the one piece that people were really excited about was the idea of observations. So the mentor is going to observe the mentee and vice versa. The other part of that is our hope is that if there are people within the school that have some expertise in other areas, that we set up those peer observations as well. This way they can see that sort of person who really does a great job of maybe literature circles, or somebody, or the math department that's doing a phenomenal job in terms of, you know, looking at assessments in a different way. So we really want to take advantage of that as well. Ultimately, our goal is to retain 100% of everybody that we've hired this year. As you're aware, education right now in the state, across the country, there's a shortage. So the more that we can support people, not only with a person that they can go to socially, emotionally, but also support them in a way that they feel valued, even as a young person coming into the profession. And really making sure we go out of our way to accommodate them so that they get everything that they need to be successful, so that when those October, November, December months roll around and that optimism goes to, oh no, what did I get myself into through cabin fever, they can come out of that in the spring saying, okay, I got this, I have that person I can go to in addition to my teammates and stuff like that. So we're really excited about the mentor program. Feedback has been positive so far. And again, we'll continue to meet. Our next training will be on October 7th. We'll have a couple-hour training for our site coordinators and our mentors as well. As you have in front of you, you see the assessment. So obviously for us, having assessment and taking a look at that data is something that's part of what my role will be, but also I think it's important for all of you to see. This is the SAT from April of 2022. I also included in there the last several ones, so you can kind of see a progression since October of 2020. That's when our seniors took it. Because of COVID, they missed out of their opportunity their junior year. So you see that those are two different pieces there. But what I also want you to see is that in each of those years, you see the number of students that took it. So let's use April 2022. We had 69 students take it out of 102 kids. So it was right around that 70 percentile of our students that actually took it. So again, that impacts our overall number. It could impact it positively, and it also could impact it negatively. So we want to take a look at what's going on with that part of it. Why aren't we getting higher percentage rates in that? And it's been fairly consistent over the last couple times that we took it. So I think that's important for us to take a look at. The other part of that is that I've talked with Jay, and we'll continue our conversation about, this is one snapshot, and while it's important for us to have that snapshot, there's a lot of other things that are going on here at Prospect Mountain. And so what we want to do is be able to look at what are those core values, what is it that our communities want from our students, and really start to highlight some of those pieces as well. Not shy away from the data, because the SAS, which will be out in October, is important. Not that the SAT is not important, but there are a lot of other things that are going on. It could be participation in our co-curricular activities. It could be attendance rates. It could be a variety of things. And again, we have to take a look at what's important to us and be able to then also report out on some of those things. Again, one of the things that we're looking at as well is what are the other assessment opportunities. We don't want to over-assess, but we also want to kind of have that conversation about what else might be out there that will help us understand quicker some of the gaps that we have, and maybe hopefully make some adjustments to those in order for some of our kids to be more successful. When you start to break some of this stuff down, which we will do in November, there's a high percentage of kids that are right there, like they're not too far off. A couple questions here, a couple questions there, and then you see that district average go up. You see the number of kids meeting ERW or math go up as well. So again, we'll be taking a look at that. And obviously we know that there's some kids that are really struggling with this as well. And again, one snapshot from there. We talked a little bit about professional development. I'm in the process of outlining, at least for the next several months, our professional development opportunities for both Prospect Mountain, but also at the elementary schools. Again, the idea is to start to get that K through 12 or that 12 through K alignment with our curriculums. We've already had this discussion at the elementary levels, so there's some excitement there. October 7th right now, there's going to be an opportunity for kindergarten teachers to meet grade 1, grade 2, and really kind of start to look at what's going on in those buildings. Talking with Jay about the idea of that personalization and starting to have those conversations about how do we create these pathways down the line for our high school kids as well. Again, we're looking at our instructional practices and our assessment techniques as part of that process of that personalization. And again, a lot of the groundwork is there. It's just a matter of now pulling it all together. And I think the presentation you heard tonight with the cause is going to help support a lot of our kids more so than you think, because of what those kids have been going through for the last few years. There is a lot of anxiety. Coming from a high school setting myself, that number of 33% on 504s is pretty consistent. We had a high percentage of 504s, and a lot of it was on stuff that is good teaching practices. So. Is that quick?
That was good.
Did you take a breath during that whole
Yeah,
thing?
did I-
No, have someone move
tried
this
that.
along.
He has a wristwatch.
Show me like 2.5 minutes.
There
He
you
knows what
go.
time it is.
All righty. You're up, Tim, I believe.
Okay, my printed report's on the table in front of you. I'm going to talk about each thing without reading it to you.
That'd be great. Oh, did I say that?
With regards to shared services, you all have an idea of what that means financially. The operational pieces, I think, are more important. Some of you have actually convinced me to stop obsessing about the dollars involved. We know that's working out, but now it's really about operations and what we can improve, and hopefully you're starting to see some of it already in your recent meetings and tonight. I think I wanted to just mention 3 areas where we're experiencing significant change. First, in IT, and I didn't ask Christy to attend tonight. Her printed report is on the table for you, and I can certainly answer questions if you have any there. It was earlier on your agenda, but you have it in front of you. They are overwhelmed. There is a tremendous amount of work to do in information technology, and there have been some bumps along the road that have affected Jay's operations and operations at the elementary schools. The good news is we have a few interviews scheduled this week and have, at least we think, a possibility of being fully staffed within the next 2 weeks. So ideally by the end of September we have a full complement of IT employees on hand, which doesn't mean we're done. It means we can start because there is a tremendous amount of work to do. With Matt's work, I could go on for a long time. I promise not to tonight, but when it comes to assessment in particular, I want to echo something he said tonight. We have to understand what we value first. Because if everyone could sit here and agree that high scores on the SAT are the reason we exist, first of all, I would argue that you're not paying attention to how many of our students are actually trying to get into four-year colleges. But if you believed that as a group, then great, this might be the only number we should look at. But you don't believe that as a group. And the faculty doesn't believe that as a faculty, right? They value other things, or we think as a community we value other things. So in my world, there should be 3 or 4 or 5 things we measure that relate to what we value. Matt's already touched on it. But the most important thing about Matt's work that I wanted to plant with you tonight is that we really need to be patient. If we hired any other high-level system administrator, we'd probably give them a year just to get to know everybody. And we're not giving that a year to get to know everybody. We want things to start happening, but it is going to take some time. He's got to get into the buildings and establish relationships and get going. And then finally with Ruth and Pam, I want to remind you that this organizational structure with a director and associate director, and at the moment an IEP team chair only at the high school, is a first step toward a structure that in 2 or 3 years ends with a system-wide director of special education and more than likely an IEP team chair at each of the 3 schools. So we're going to continue to go through transitions year by year, but here we are. So we're off to a good start. It's really nice to have people on board to do a lot of this work. My headache's a little less, but we have a lot to do. On open enrollment and blended learning, stop me if you have questions at any time. I talked about open enrollment when Carol and Sean Esdott and I met with that Alton CIP committee. It seemed like a good public place to float that trial balloon, and they were incredibly positive.
They were very supportive of it.
About
That's great.
the open enrollment idea. And I want to suggest to you that as we get into the winter, that the joint board, and I don't have a plan for you tonight, but I think that by sometime shortly after Thanksgiving, some kind of public communication strategy to start talking about open enrollment before you drop warrant articles on the warrants and ask people to vote for it. And we need to be careful about how we spend taxpayer money to advocate for positions, and I'll work all that stuff out with your lawyer before we get there. But I do think that's something. There, at one time we had a communications committee. That might be something we want that group to talk about. Sorry, Lila. So give me another month or 2, and I think that's going to be important. With regards to the blended learning pilot, I already informed you that we received a special grant from the commissioner They've requested a little additional information from me, which I can provide. And we conducted a focus group meeting, online Google Meet it was scheduled for an hour and went for almost 2. It was a really, really interesting conversation. Some community stakeholders along with some of our folks and some of the third parties we've been working with on this. And out of that came to, it just didn't make sense to try to put together a pilot program and actually have it working with kids today, right? This was 2 weeks ago. So what I'm going to do now is put together a committee to develop the idea and the pilot and run a 1-semester pilot starting with the beginning of semester 2, whatever date that is, in late January or early February here at the high school. That gives us months at least to do the work. I'm meeting tomorrow with somebody who might be able to coordinate and lead that work for us. We have money in the grant that I wrote that we were given by the commissioner that would pay that person. So it's all sort of built in that we can bring in some more resources to help us develop this idea, which right now is all it is.
So when you say spring pilot, does that mean we're asking some students mid-year to shift?
Yep. And I think that one of the target audiences for this is students who might be homeschooling currently and interested in a different kind of structure. So that audience would be available. And another one would be, and I think it's a small number, but the few students who kind of thrived with remote learning and honestly don't want to be back in the school buildings. And I think that's a very small number, but they might in fact be perfectly willing to jump out halfway through the year into something like this. And then finally, I think what we're asking them to do is be a focus group. Try it, give us feedback, help us develop this to really launch the following fall if we move forward. So yes, that is what it would mean.
Tough for self.
Yep. I don't know, as opposed to we're doing this in 10 days.
No, I mean, just,
It was something we talked about for a long time in that meeting that night. So this is where we landed. I talked to you about our practices around renting this facility, both the fields and the indoor facility. More to come for tonight. I can tell you that we've had a total of 725 requests to use the facility over the last 6 years, but for the second half of that time period, that includes internal student activities requests, not just external requests. I'm not going to drop 725 anything in front of all of you, so I'm going to go work with this data and Jay a little bit. The system we're using right now that people fill out online, again, it's both for student activities and for outside groups coming in asking to use the facility. It doesn't, you can interpret from the data that's there who should be paying fees and who should not, but it's not like, there's not a field that says pay, no pay. You have to sort of figure it out based on other things. And this has been subject to interpretation, human intervention, case by the director of facilities. That's how this has been done. And again, I told you last time, there's been at least an understanding that at some time in the past, the board has extended some special arrangements to different organizations that I can't find in writing. So anyway, I am planning to, once we cross-reference billing records, which I haven't even gone to Heidi about yet because she had audits all last week, so we'll wait another couple of weeks and then we'll talk about this. But I'll give the business office some time to create billing records. We'll cross-reference those with the requests. That'll give us at least an approximate idea of the efficiency of the system, right? If we have twice as many outside group requests as we have invoices, that suggests that something maybe has been happening, and we'll find out. At any rate, I expect to be back to you maybe mid-year to talk about findings, and I think I don't really have any question in my mind at this point that I'll be proposing to you a system.
Something that maybe go through buildings and grounds. So a small group there. And
you want me to bring it to you first? Happy to.
I mean, just
I'm going to do the work on it. I've done it before. It's sensitive. There's money involved.
I don't know. I think maybe just a smaller group though that you can start with and work out the kinks before bringing.
See you in January.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Gee, I'm going on a cruise in January, I won't be available.
All right, February. But I think, you know, to implement something July 1st of the next fiscal year makes sense. It's
Yeah.
been the way it is
Give
for
yourself
6
some
years,
time,
so
right.
it gives us time.
It's been
Do it
ongoing
right.
for so long.
On EOPs, not to rush, but on EOPs, they are due under the new law on October 15th. Jay and his assistant principal, Amanda Russell, have drafted one using HSEM's new template. Thank you. We're going to update that with whatever the new protocols and implementation plan is. I can tell you it's going to be CRACE because that's kind of dictated by HSEM at this point in New Hampshire. We should be using the CRACE protocol, CRASC, not ALICE or any of the other available crisis management protocols. So we've just got to develop a training plan. Every administrator has to undergo ICS, Incident Command System training. All of our staff need CRACE training, and then we can start thinking about drills. So this is a 18 to 24 month process, all told, until we're doing something, you know, multi-agency maybe. And we'll talk, don't worry, before we even consider doing anything with kids present, we're going to talk. I'm not, as you know, a big fan of having kids run around in these pretend scenarios, but that's a long way away. The first work, though, the ICS training, the first CRACE training, I think that's happening this fall. So we'll know more for sure after our meeting on September 14th with that multi-agency group that we're working with on this. And then finally, just because it's been a topic of conversation, I've given you each a copy of the SAU 86, Barnstead's Suicide Prevention Plan, and the Alton SAU 72 Crisis Response Plan, which has a suicide prevention section in it. These are the plan. Remember, we talked at your last meeting about the difference between the policy and the plans or the procedures that are created under the policies. So these are the existing documents from those two SAUs that we've asked our 3 social workers to work from to create a plan that we can then adapt with just the identifying information of the people who work in each school for use in each school. We've asked them to try to get that done by October 1st, which means because it's been a topic of interest here, we'll bring you a copy here at your October meeting, provided that our folks meet that deadline. Try to go fast.
You did a good job.
Yes.
Are we all set then?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have some action items. We have the 2022-23 faculty and staff handbook. Are there big changes in this?
The staff handbook, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the first one on the agenda.
The staff handbook is something that the SAU has traditionally handled.
Yep,
Oh,
there are
okay.
not, it's,
And
It's the same as before?
so Mrs. Russell had gone through it and made suggested changes back in the spring and early summer. And the last time I think I had put my eyes on it was when it was revised in July.
So are there revisions?
So are there revisions in
So
here?
there are revisions, but I'm not gonna be able to itemize them out for you.
Was there any substantial changes?
Right, that's a better question.
Who did you ask?
Jay, did you hear Jason?
Was there any substantial changes that we would need?
Honestly, I don't know. It hasn't been something that my office has been responsible for doing. So I know Mrs. Russell was a little bit frustrated with staff handbook from years past, took it upon herself to update it. But I do not know since July if anything has been modified.
yeah, we haven't changed it since then, but I can have somebody go through and highlight differences from the old one,
I'll make a motion to accept the handbook, faculty handbook 20,
or we could do that.
2022, 23, but also next board meeting bring us the highlights of what's changed. At least like the handbook.
So you want to
started.
approve it before we know what happened?
Sure. They have to have something to start with.
So,
I mean, I'm just-
so the long and the short of it, what we did was when the stuff from the handbook and stuff from the policy that was outdated in the previous one. She went through and cleaned up the language so it's consistent with the handbook. It relates to the updated policies. But again, I can't tell you for certain what specifically she did and what has been done since July, if anything.
I would just like to say, obviously I have not read it word for word, but they're in thumbing through it, and I have not seen anything that is cause for concern. So
Heidi
I would
just-
be comfortable with it.
Heidi just said her edits didn't make it in.
Yeah, it's not the way we usually do it. We usually see what
We
the
see what the
revisions
changes are,
Yeah.
right?
So that gives us a chance it opens up discussion for, other things that might come up.
So we should probably table any action on it until we know what the changes were. Sounds like.
So you gotta run to the old handbook, I guess, then?
Say that again?
You have to run the old handbook, I guess, then if we'll take a vote.
So we'll wait and take a vote next time. Seems reasonable. What about the substitute handbook?
So the substitute handbook, we've made the appropriate changes as it relates to what this school year is going to look like. Otherwise, this is what we distribute to substitutes when they are first hired.
So you just put in the scheduling changes, is that what you're saying?
I don't even think we go that far,
Okay.
because we rely on substitute plans being left and teachers
Sure.
reviewing
The
whatever it
teachers
is
should
that
have it written down.
Yep. So
All right,
this is
so there
more
are no
focused on the
sub-
responsibilities of the subs and the do's and the don'ts.
And there are really no changes?
Nope.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept?
Sure.
The
Motion to set
handbook
the
for
handbook
sub-
for substitutes for 22, 23.
Do I have a second? Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we got that one passed, anyway. All right, non-CBA salary budget transfer.
So that's what I have from the finance committee. So this is really a budget line transfer where we budget the admin merit increases in a particular line in the budget, usually in the superintendent's office. And that needs to be distributed out into each section of the actual operating budget.
Okay.
So this is just Heidi's process of moving that, and the amount of that line to be moved is $49,927. So that will be distributed throughout multiple accounts in the operating budget.
Is that a motion?
So I will move that we accept the budget line transfer of $49,927,000
Second.
for non-CBA employees, I should.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All righty. Special education MOU.
So this is on the table for you. Let me find mine. It's on the table for you, but not for me. So I brought this tonight without expecting you to take final action on it, but I would like to just show it to you. It looks like this.
Yep.
Yes, good. So I give you a little history here about what the special ed MOU is. It is, in a nutshell, how the boards of Alton and Barnstead agreed to pay for and make decisions about special education services at the JMA High School. It's been changed once. Changes have been discussed 4 or 5 times that I can find records of over the years.
I think you gave me your copy because it's highlighted.
Oh, no, they're all
Oh, mine's
highlighted.
highlighted,
Yep, I copied it in color. I'm that considerate.
Wow, I'm really impressed.
So, the last change, the wording hasn't been edited. The practices that back it up were changed in the 16-17 or after the 16-17 school year to change the way paraprofessionals are employed and their costs are billed to the two towns districts. Now, because of the shared services MOA being put into practice this year in special education, I am recommending that you consider some changes to the actual language. I've broken it down by page number and paragraph. I don't have to go through all of them tonight. If you want to go through it, I'm very sensitive to the time right now. I expect this to come back to you next month anyway for your approval. At the same time, if you have significant input, I'd love to get it, if not tonight, in the next couple of weeks, so that what I bring you at your next meeting, you could act on. And finally, I've sent this for an opinion from your attorney, so I wouldn't want you to take action tonight anyway, because I want to make sure that he's satisfied, although he and I had a conversation about it before I did this work, to make sure.
Okay. So we'll take it home and read it.
Up to you if you want to do it.
So the highlighted pieces are the.
So yeah, so under proposed amendments, I've listed page numbers, and I numbered the paragraphs by hand, so that, like, page 2, paragraph 12, turn to page 2, see paragraph 12, there I highlighted a line and copied it in color for you, so you can see that it's highlighted, and then I suggest an amendment back here, sort of on my first page, right?
Okay.
So I'm highlighting the section and then telling you what I recommend. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes in the document.
So some
I
homework.
think we talked about this before, but could you remind us, so part of this change doesn't only have to do with the shared services, it has to do with correcting an LEA process?
Yeah, so the, one of the previous discussions about changing this document already had to do with who is the LEA representative, the LEA representative for each student. The way the MOU was written originally, it assumed 3 special ed directors, first of all. And the MOU stated that the high school special education director would be the LEA representative for a student attending the high school from either town. The special ed director from that town, where the student resides, would be a member of the team, but not the LEA representative. The potential conflict in that, and you did well for 17 years or whatever it was, because I don't think this ever became an issue. And if it was, they kept it quiet and it never went anywhere and became an issue. But the potential was always there for the high school director and the local director to disagree, particularly about an out-of-district placement. I think that's where it could have blown up at some point and just apparently never did. What do you do in that case? Because the MOU stated that the high school special ed director was the LEA representative. Therefore, at the end of the day, you know, the team is making a decision, and that LEA representative takes a position, which we then, and in the MOU, I'm authorized to go to DOE and participate in hearings or go to court or whatever we need to do. We've taken a position and could be in a situation where the special ed director from the other SAU has a different position. That's awkward at a minimum and could have been worse. It's not really possible now because you're talking about the same people, or the same person ultimately, a special education director. The thing that your attorney and I talked about was having language, and you'll find it on page 5 in paragraph 25, is that there's some language here that has to do with that director of special education's professional responsibility in the event he or she perceives a conflict of interest between the high school SAU and one of the other SAUs. And what we arrived at is it is that person's professional responsibility in that case to come to me. And then we either figure it out together or I come to you.
Okay. Alrighty. We all set? Okay. All right, on to our personnel matters. We have a resignation. Can I hear a,
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Norman Gilbert, support staff.
Second.
any discussion? With regret? Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a new hire, IT technology support staff, Jeremy Severinson. Do I have a motion?
Sure, motion to hire, motion to approve Jeremy Severinson as IT support staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we're on to the athletic department.
Make a
Okay.
motion to accept Drew Williams as a JV girls soccer coach and Eric Boudreau as a JV boys soccer coach.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All righty. Negotiations.
So, there will be one negotiation for SAU 301. This year, we received a letter from the PMESPA.
That's what it says, yeah.
The Paraprofessional Support Staff Association, asking to open negotiations on their next collective bargaining agreement. So the joint board needs to appoint negotiators and respond to that letter, which I can do for you. And I know she isn't here, but you have one volunteer
Eunice.
to represent the joint board in those negotiations.
Eunice, right?
Eunice.
She volunteered. I thought we had a committee, though. I think I
Eunice is
got-
on it anyway, so.
I think I was put on that committee. I didn't really want to be, but.
So
There's a committee.
the question.
I'm on that committee.
The question is, do you want that committee, which is 4 people, to negotiate this collective bargaining agreement, or do you want to consider appointing 2, 1 from each town,
I said
to do
one
that
from each town.
from within that committee? Hmm?
One from each town. 'cause
One
I'm
from
on
each town?
negotiations and
That works.
I'm
How many people do they
Yeah.
have on it?
I say
Yeah.
one from each town with an alternate, that's all you gotta do is backup in case you need, right?
Say that again?
An alternate, if you have 2 people on there, just one's
Sure,
the
we
main
have
and the
an
one's a
alternate. I'll
backup.
be happy to be the alternate.
Yeah, I'll
I
be
think I'm
the alternate
negotiating
for
somewhere
Eunice,
else, aren't I?
'cause I'm on
Am I negotiating
negotiation.
in Alton too? Is there somewhere else? we're
Yes,
negotiating?
the Alton Teachers Association will be more than
Negotiating?
likely seeking to negotiate shortly.
So I
Pam's
be
the other one,
alternate.
right?
Pam is the
Yeah.
other one, and she's not here, which means you can appoint her to whatever you want.
Perfect.
Should we wait and ask Pam?
I can do that for you if you
That'd
want.
be great.
In the interest of expediency.
That would be great.
Sounds good.
Done. By then, hopefully she'll be able to sit up.
I see consensus, that sounds good.
Done, thank you.
All right, summer shutdown week. What does that mean?
Something to think about. We don't have to decide it now, but when we have disruptive projects in schools, it can be nice to have a week that we can rely on when nobody will be at work. Also, when we have year-round employees who don't always use all their vacation time,
You force
it
them
can
out.
be nice to require them to use 5 days worth of vacation time during a particular week. It's early right now, we don't need to make this decision, but at the end of the summer, when this kind of thing is on our minds, is a good time to bring it up, lest we forget. I
it's
used to have a
great
summer
idea.
shutdown for a week, in my case, it was the first week of August every year. I thought it worked out really well, for the reasons I just stated.
Just note, we do payroll every week, so I don't know that we can totally shut down, if you want to get paid.
There are always a couple of exceptions, but it's a great week to cut a hole in the roof or something like that if Andy has to, or, you know, if he's worried about people walking across the freshly repaired concrete sidewalk, he doesn't have to worry about it that week.
Can you do payroll from the SAU office?
We can work something out.
So,
Yeah, I mean-
would you be looking at specific dates, so you could bring us, like, maybe for? you know-
Oh, yeah, I will. I mean, I just wanted to
I think it's a
plant
good
the seed,
idea. Yeah, I
take your
think it's
temperature a
fine.
little bit.
Why not?
But it would mean, here's what it would mean. We have a bunch of, and here we probably have more than I could think of off the top of my head, different manuals for different categories and groups of employees that we would just need to go through them all and add language or change language or something like that. So it's a project.
Why do you object to
And if you hated the idea, I'd rather you tell me that you hate the idea
No, I
before we
like
do all
the
that
idea.
work.
Go for it. I like it.
All right, we'll do the work.
And then we'll still sign up.
Alrighty. We have some policies to go over. First, second, and adoption of these new policies. We need to adopt those first 2.
Do you want to hit that?
What are we looking at?
Yeah,
J-
so
Randy?
ECB and JFAB.
So these are not required, you don't need to.
All right.
But, Brandon,
Right, so just real quick, the policy committee met this evening, and what this is in place, just to have something in, we're moving towards hopefully open enrollment, but it's not in effect just yet. So this is something in place that in the event, there's a process, there's an application, we have it in writing. May or may not get used, but it's there if we need it. So we thought it was worth bringing to the board so that we could vote on it.
Okay.
Is this a first read or is it final?
I think we've seen it before.
You did, you saw it last meeting.
Yeah, I thought
And
we
we've
saw
talked
it.
about it,
Yeah.
and then in the policy committee meeting this evening, we talked about that it might be better, like as Brandy said, just to have it in place, and we can always, you know, amend it, but it has the process.
Right,
which-
gives you that step by step.
Right, exactly, so,
I make a motion to accept policy JECB, emission of tuition and non-resident students for final read, and JFAB, Prospect Mountain High School, emission of tuition and non-resident students policy for final read.
second.
Second. Any more discussion?
There's a highlighted line which had to do with the professionals employed by us using the benefit. Did you guys talk about that?
We did, and so we talked about that it would be a benefit for employees. Nobody takes advantage of it, but it is an option. And we also talked about the fact that it would actually be affordable for employees, and that the, what is that, Tim, that fund that covers?
Educational freedom
Thank you.
accounts
Yeah.
in New Hampshire.
Right, would actually be more. But if you had two teachers, for example, that they could actually afford to send their student to Prospect, their child to Prospect.
Should this be for employees, not just professionals? Is there a reason why this, I mean, that implies certification or something more than
You could change that.
Yeah,
district employees, I think is what is used elsewhere, right?
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, so I don't know if we need to,
So we can vote on the policy as amended?
as amended.
Yep. All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then we have policies, updated policies for public participation and immunizations. The immunization one is just simply, it's no longer notarized, is that what it is?
Correct.
That's the only change.
And then public participation. Is there anything outstanding we need to know about that?
So the public participation was just, that we wanted to have a refresher for the board because it is, was it 30 minutes?
Yeah, so a new law requires that you provide at least one period of public input in each public meeting, and that you provide not less than 30 minutes for that participation if you have enough people who want to do it. So my interpretation, with some support, not just myself, of that is your existing policy still works. You actually have in policy at the JMA, public participation limited to 3 minutes per person, which I believe you can still do, but if you have enough people here lined up, you have to provide at least 30 minutes for that to happen. You have public participation both at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. You don't have to do 30 minutes each time. The law requires you now, this didn't used to be the case in New Hampshire, but now you need to provide 30 minutes worth of public participation. I also don't believe, because you've established a reasonable limit per person of 3 minutes, that if one person shows up and says, I want all 30 minutes, I don't believe you have to do that.
Well, that would be
So
good.
your policy, I believe, works as it is, and this was where
Do we need
the
to have
policy
three-
committee ended
Do we
up.
need to have the 3 minutes in this policy?
It is in your policy.
I I feel like we do.
I would, no, I'm in favor of it, I
Yep.
just, okay, I see it now, I just didn't see it when I.
It is in
scanned
your
through.
policy, so the only change proposed is to add this RSA to the legal reference section, and your chair just needs to know the law.
Well, thank goodness I'm not the chair.
And I feel like we always have allowed people to speak, like, there's certainly been times it's been more.
Right, and it's been
30
pretty
minutes.
quiet lately,
Right.
but there
But
have
there's
certainly
been
been
times.
times.
Give me time.
Well,
As
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
unfortunate state, we're not allowing it,
It
and
is.
so now they brought it, and now it's a state law.
But I think having the limit, if there are multiple people here, it makes sure that all voices are being heard and not just somebody that speaks for 30 minutes.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's the intent of the law, and this document too outlines, I think it's a good refresher, I keep referring to it as a
Right.
refresher document, but it's good for all of us to hear, is the initial public input is really just a comment on our agenda.
Right.
The later public input is where they have the opportunity to speak about any items addressed or otherwise. I wouldn't know that if I was, for
Oh,
example,
okay.
chairing the meeting. So I just thought it would be a good opportunity for us all to be transparent and
Sure.
have that in front of them. But no changes that we need to vote on for that one.
All right, so these are already established policies, so we don't need to vote on them, do we?
Do we need to
The
vote
only
on
one
the
is JLCP.
immunization?
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a comment on
Okay.
the public input, because I've heard it brought up in other districts about whether we allow public input from residents.
What does it say? What does it say?
It says residents.
It does.
Does say residents? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the board chair can give permission to non-residents. I think that's what happened last fall when we had some input from non-residents, but the board chair had given that person permission.
And that person would have the same 3 minutes.
Yep. That was my understanding anyway.
we don't
So
need
I
to
make a
vote.
motion, oh, Karen, did you have anything else? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just wondering-
You don't need to vote,
It says
just the immunization.
residents to attend,
But
but
I didn't know
do
she's
we
done.
restrict input?
It says for citizens to address the board under number 1.
It's very rare that we have non-residents anyway speaking, but
I guess part of what I've heard
Oh,
is
should
there.
it call it out specifically?
Yeah, I mean, there are issues in other districts on certain subjects
Mhm.
that people are coming to meetings for public input when they don't live.
so you wanted to say residents instead of citizens? Is that what you're saying? It says citizens?
I just thought it was something
Does
we
say
should discuss, because if you had non-resident input, that really should be something that's, I would think, approved, or like an expert witness or something like that, or expert. You would want that approved by the chair and the superintendent ahead of time, and not have that person take time away from residents who want to provide input.
And I think last time, I mean, we're talking about a specific,
I'm not talking about a specific occasion. I mean, we had an occasion like that.
We
but
had
I
an
don't think it's-
occasion,
it's
right.
just-
Yeah, we
Even
had
at
the
town
occasion
meeting,
in
they'll-
Alton.
They
We
say,
had
like,
one.
you need approval.
Well, except that we have residents of 2 towns who come here.
Yeah, we'd have
so
2
are
towns
we-
represented in this
But
one.
we're technically in
We'd have more
Alton,
than that
so.
next year.
Oh, yeah, that's true. What if we have more than one town
I
represented?
think it's.
Or if we have
But the
If you had open
tuition and
enrollment.
students, do those parents get to
Prospect
come
Mountain
and
High
talk
School
to
would
us?
relate to residents of the 2 towns, but then you have an open enrollment school.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So
I
it
think
gets a
we
little
shouldn't mess with it.
tricky, but
So just leave it.
Why don't we just leave it?
I've heard certain groups advising that it is unwise to have it undefined in your public input policy. You can always have the chair recognize somebody and approve it, but unless you're setting a guideline to begin with that the residents of the towns that students are coming from have precedence in the public input, you could run into trouble.
So should we
We've
vote
had
on
an example of
a revision
some trouble.
or?
I say you need to go back to the policy committee to look at for next month and bring us. You like
To have
that?
them reword that one?
Well, what if it's resident and or representative of a tuition student? So,
so like a parent of a tuition student.
right, I mean, I'm trying to think of who else would attend.
Right.
right?
Residents of
I'm-
Alton or Barnstead, or parents and guardians of students enrolled at the school.
That way it covers.
All right, there you go. Should we just vote on that then,
Yeah.
as amended?
As amended.
Okay. All those, did we already have the motion? Go.
motion's on the table.
For this?
As amended.
We didn't do a motion yet, though. Make a motion to accept BEDH, because I told him we didn't need a motion. BEDH, Prospect Mountain High School Public Participation in Board Meetings, as amended, language change the superintendent presented.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Make a motion to accept JLCB, Prospect Mountain High School immunizations of students. Final read.
Second.
any discussion? That's just the change in law about the notary.
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty,
Make a motion to ratify the phone poll that was taken on, do you know what date that was?
Thursday or Friday?
on the exchange student,
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday for the unexchanged student.
you have a second? Any discussion?
Fantastic.
We already, hearing none, we already voted on it, but let's vote again. Here we go. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I'm glad we said yes since the poor child started today, I believe. All righty. Now we have another public input. Do you have anything to say tonight, other than, no? Okay. All right, I'm closing public input. Future agenda and follow-up items.
We're going to bring back the faculty staff handbook, and we're going to call out the changes.
Okay, that would be great. Anything else you want to add to the agenda next time? Anyone have anything?
I'm sure things will crop up.
There's
I'm
going to
sure.
be another policy committee meeting. The NHSBA annual policy guidance just came out on Thursday prior to this meeting, so we're going to process that and then
Bring
meet
it
with-
to us.
meet with these two again.
There'll be a report probably from, I'm sure we're going to do a facility and grounds meeting, so we'll probably putting something back out.
All righty. Anything else? I'm sure things will crop up, as you said.
You're going to be looking at someone to speak, not public.
Right.
All right, maybe an update on the
Yep, got
cause,
it.
maybe the communications that went out. I don't know. Just trying to think of something else we can add, but, you know, I wouldn't want a long meeting,
Don't
geez.
try too hard.
We'll have some.
These
We'll have plenty.
I'm sure we'll have plenty. Okay, so we need to go into non-public again?
So I move we enter non-public under RSA 91-A:32A.
Second?
Roll call?
Yes.
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 All righty.